Hello! Today we'd like to discuss for you some quick tips for a successful IEP meeting, which stands for Individualized Educational Program. This training is brought to you by Together forourkeiki Foundation. Together forourkeiki does not provide medical or legal advice or services directly. Rather, our foundation provides general information about applied behavior analysis, education, and matters relevant to these communities. The information provided in this presentation today is not a referral or endorsement of any resource or service provider, and it does not or should not replace the advice of a contracted medical, legal, or educational professional. Our mission at forourkeiki Foundation, we believe in creating and advocating for an inclusive community. We believe that our children, which is what keiki stands for in Hawaiian, that they are going to be empowered by empowering their parents and educating local stakeholders. We believe parents have a right to understand their legal rights, to have their voices heard, to feel supported, and to access trained professionals. The first section that we'll talk about today is preparing for your IEP, and let's have someone help us out with that. As a parent, you should know that your schedule takes priority. Be reasonable, especially if you have a large team or a large group of people coming together. Provide the team with a few dates and times that you're available, but make sure that you are prioritizing what works best for you and your family. It can be really helpful to keep a running timeline of appointments and dates, relevant events, things that come up. You know, when was the school play? When did the incident on the bus happen? Hopefully that didn't happen. You know, your notebook doesn't have to be sparkly, but it could be. I do like things that are sparkly and shiny and glittery and the color of the rainbow, but a simple notebook will do. In addition to your running timeline in the notebook, we also recommend creating a binder. This binder should include assessments, meeting notices, really just a great way to help you organize material that you want to bring to the doctor or the school team. This binder can go with you across places. I guess it doesn't have to be an IEP binder, but make sure that you have all of it together and that you bring it with you to your meeting. It can be a really nice touch to add pictures of your son or daughter to the front and back of the binder. Sometimes you can pull these out during the meeting. It helps everybody remember who we're working together for and what this team is really about. Every time that you meet, once you have an IEP, is technically an IEP meeting. That means that you want to have a sign-in sheet and that you do deserve a conference notice that tells you who's going to be attending your meeting. Make sure that you also get your procedural safeguards and that you look at that book so that you can ask questions of your team if you do have any questions at all. Your procedural safeguards are that tiny book that they give you at every meeting or that they're legally supposed to. Do make sure that you read it. And if you have questions, make sure that you ask your team. In many cases, you can also find these legal rights and protections available online. Before your meeting, there's a couple of ways you can prepare and things that you should do ahead of time. The first is that you want to make sure that you've requested all reports so that you've had a chance to review them. And you want to make sure that you have the conference notice and that you've had a chance to review and look over who has been invited to discuss confidential information about your child and who is going to be a part of the team. With regard to the conference notice and the sign-in sheet that we talked about earlier, it goes along the same lines of just making sure that your communications are in writing. So when you request those reports in advance, make sure that you do that in writing. And if you say it at a team meeting for the next meeting, that's fine too. Make sure it's written on your prior written notice or make sure that you follow up in an email. Always bring someone with you to your meetings. It's very difficult to talk about your child sometimes. I mean, we're talking about all these acronyms and terms, and the IEP is like a contract, and this is your child. This is your heart and soul. And so make sure that you bring a neighbor, a friend, your spouse, an advocate, the mailman if you have to. Parents will ask if they should let the team know that they're bringing somebody with them. Yes, we recommend yes. Of course, you can get specific advice elsewhere, but it does go a long way to be honest, transparent, and to communicate in both directions. Preparing for parent concern sections can be really challenging, and you might just want to gloss over them. But this is your opportunity to say what your fears are. It's also an opportunity to say what your hopes and your dreams are. You might say, I'm afraid that my child will be without meaningful friendships, and my hopes and my dreams are that they will be invited to a sleepover. You might also include that you're worried that your child will not reach appropriate grade level reading performance, or that they may never find themselves lost in a book. And your hopes and your dreams are that they will find a way to read for fun and not just because it's required. As we stated before, we do recommend putting these in writing. It's also easier for your team to input directly into the IEP if you've given them a digital version. If you're going to bring it with you as a printout, it's also helpful because people can refer to it as you're reading it or as you're going over it for the parent concern section in the IEP. If you didn't bring it with you, don't worry. You can send it to them later that day or the next day. It is perfectly acceptable to record your IEP meeting. In fact, we recommend it. But we also recommend that you're transparent and honest, and that you let the team know, and that the school will often also ask to record, and that's not a problem here. Remember, this is kind of a contract, or it is a contract, and it's very technical. A recording can help you refer back to the conversations later. Many people have access to smartphones now, and that's really probably the easiest way to get a recording if you need one. Of course, you can also still get tape recorders, just not sure if you can still get tapes. If you don't have access to a recording device, you can make the request ahead of time of the school and ask that they provide a recorder and that they provide you with a copy of the recording. At every meeting, you should expect the team to start with introductions. Even if you know everybody in the room, you want to make sure that they all know each other and that everyone's aware of the role that everyone is playing. Again, with your conference announcement, you should already be aware of who's in the room, but this is an opportunity for people to state their name, especially for the recording, and also for everyone to put a face with a name because we might have been communicating a lot via email. Your sign-in sheets will tell you who was at the meeting, and they'll be helpful when you go back later. You're going to want to take that sign-in sheet, make a copy, and if the copier isn't working or not available, just go ahead and take a photo. That will do. Then you can match it with your conference announcement, ask any questions if you need to, in an email if you need to, and then go ahead and add it to your IEP binder. When the team is discussing assessments for evaluation to determine eligibility or to determine if additional services are needed, if the child already qualifies for an IEP, then you're going to want to make sure that you get a list, or that you ask for a list of possible assessments, so that the whole team is considering every piece of information possible at the beginning. If you're having a meeting to discuss eligibility or to discuss if additional services are needed, you might want to ask for, or we do recommend asking for, a printed copy of anything that's going to be reviewed. Again, ahead of time if possible, but definitely that you have it in front of you during the meeting. This is information the school has, so it's publicly available and they should be able to provide it to you with no problems. Always ask for clarification. Ask questions if you don't understand. This is your child. This is about what's in their best interest. So you want to make sure that you speak up if you're confused or concerned. Sometimes school teams just get in the habit of running these meetings all the time. They use all these letters, PLEP and IEP and LBA and SLP, and it's okay to ask what that means. If you have other questions, ask those questions too. Even if you completely understand, but you need to voice a disagreement, a comment, or a concern, please feel comfortable doing that. And we recommend or find the most success when people ask open-ended questions like, what is the process and who is involved, and help me explain or help me understand. Can you explain? That can go a long way. It can be very, very helpful to take notes during your meeting, but to some people that can be really distracting. So this is why another reason it's helpful to have the recording, or while it's helpful to have another person come to the meeting with you. The school will also be taking notes, or somebody, a designee from the team, will be taking notes. You can also ask for a copy of their notes. After the meeting, you'll receive a prior written notice, so there will be lots of documentation. If you need to take a break, that's okay. If you need to run to the restroom, that's fine. If you need to call and get some input, and it can be, quick and a short break, that's fine. Just speak up, communicate, talk, model what that should look like, and I think will find it will go in both directions. So it's okay to take a break. It's also okay to end your meeting and to schedule a follow-up meeting at another time. Anytime the team wants to conduct an evaluation, you as the parent have to authorize consent, So if you want to have a speech and language assessment done, or an occupation, evaluation, occupational therapy evaluation, or a functional behavior assessment, and everyone agrees, then you should sign consent for that. However, you don't have to sign anything at your meeting. It is important to ask questions and to ask how quickly the team needs the signature back and what the implications are. If taking it home and waiting 10 days means that's going to delay the assessment, well, then you want to be as quick as possible. But you also don't want to feel like you have to sign something at the meeting if you don't understand it, if you haven't thought it through, and if you have somebody else you want to talk to about it. It's okay. The school team will send you your prior written notice after the meeting. It's kind of strange for it to say prior if it comes after the meeting, but it means prior to being implemented, or prior to starting, the plan, if you will. So even though the team's going to send you that summary, it might take a couple of days, and you may wish to submit your own. We recommend sending a follow-up email summarizing every meeting. Now, keep your email brief. It doesn't have to include quotes from everybody. And if you go to the website that we mentioned, you can get a downloadable PWN worksheet that parents might find helpful to guide them in creating kind of their own summary during the meeting, or even filling it in just after the meeting that they send as the summary to the team. Thanks again for joining us. And if you have any questions, suggestions, ideas, information that you want to share with us or ask us about, you can do that through our Contact Us page at our website, which is www.forourkeiki.webs.com.